So you're telling me a natural disaster that's occurring in specific areas is leading to a business venture that people are not supposed to find out? God, I think I've heard this one before.
Disrupt America that I fought for.
Weird thing to happen. I know I've been harping on this hiking ban for a bit now, but when you see how just deranged the lunacy, the just draconian measure, the authoritarian overreaching this has, you can't be silent about this. And even as Table Salt pointed out, this is according to Grok. So they asked the AI how they feel, how the AI feels about these restrictions. Tim Houston's ban on entering any forest lands is the second most strict land use by law in the history of human civilization. That's according to Grok. Surpassed only by mutilation for using the King of England's hunting grounds in 1200 AD. So the Nova Scotia Premier has the second worst land restriction penalties on their own civilians, going as far back as the King of England back in at medieval times. That's according to Grok. And it says here, Tim Houston's 2025 Nova Scotia ban on entering all forests with $25,000 fines is not the strictest in history, ranking second due to its temporary nature and exemptions. Medieval England's forest law, the strictest, imposed broader long-term restrictions on vast royal forests, like with penalties like mutilation or execution. That's from conservative leader Tim Houston, progressive conservative leader Tim Houston of Nova Scotia. Very, very much so similar to the King of England back in medieval period. Hopefully it doesn't get to that point. But this is definitely a shock and awe in the legislation of this country. So, why exactly is this happening? Why does it feel like that the premiers of these provinces in Atlantic Canada and really around the country seem to actually ignore the response of these wildfires in restricting more and more people with these measures? Well, here's a thought here. This is from Canadian Doge. And they pointed this out. Nova Scotia lifted the uranium ban, mining ban in March of 2025, nearly after 50 years. The deposit sits very close to wildfire areas and would explain a lot, given they don't want people finding out about the mining process. So you're telling me a natural disaster that's occurring in specific areas is leading to a business venture that people are not supposed to find out? God, I think I've heard this one before. We'll figure that out, but that is devastating, folks. That's devastating if that's the case. I'm not saying it's 100% accurate, but it wouldn't surprise me. It wouldn't surprise me because it very sounds familiar. And there's a map of uranium occurrences were documented all over Nova Scotia before the uranium ban. So there's all the different areas of minerals across the province of Nova Scotia, and primarily in areas, especially this one here, where I'm circling, is where the wildfires are occurring. I guess nature is more smarter than we think. It could directly cause a wildfire, specifically in an area that has natural minerals. that a business venture wants to capitalize on. Isn't that interesting? The ban was lifted in March of 2025, which would explain its weird and sudden woods ban of people. The wildfires are also near the mining areas, which is no surprise. They want to cover up this mess. So this is from the province's website. This is Nova Scotia's website. Uranium exploration requests for proposal. Individuals and companies interested in exploring for uranium in certain parts of Nova Scotia can now adopt through a request for proposals. The government of Nova Scotia repealed legislation that banned uranium exploration and mining effective the 26th of March, 2025. So, months before these wildfires started, the government of Nova Scotia reversed a ban on mineral extraction, uranium exploration that's been in place for 50 years. And then all of a sudden, these natural disasters that are happening strategically in the areas that they scouted out these minerals are occurring. And they're penalizing people from going into forest areas. Also, in those areas. So, I can't confirm nor deny this, but all I could say is the evidence is heading in that direction. And it seems very too familiar. Very, very too familiar. Well, you remember North Carolina? You remember the Hurricane Helene that happened in North Carolina that people are still salvaging because FEMA, the federal government of the United States, completely failed them. Both Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, and Donald Trump have all failed the people of North Carolina. Well, it turns out that North Carolina, and particularly in the areas where the hurricane hit the most, also had natural mineral wealth. And they needed some sort of ploy to purposely attack people living in this area to get them out of the area so they could start extracting. Because they can't just go in and dig up minerals with residents still living in the area. So what if, by some surprise that a natural disaster occurred, we found a way to manipulate it, because we know about weather modification, and bring that hurricane right over the area that we want to completely eliminate any residential area whatsoever and start this exploration, start the extraction of minerals. Sounds crazy, right? Sounds crazy, but that's the possibility of why that occurred. So, according to MJ Truth Ultra, turns out Gaston County, North Carolina, a company named Piedmont Lithium, aimed to mine lithium, the core mineral for electric vehicle batteries. The only problem, the residents. Residents have been battling against reopening the lithium mines for the last several years. Piedmont Lithium, several months ago, finally secured a state-approved mining permit. Fast forward to today, Hurricane Helene decimated the area. This is too much of a coincidence to be a coincidence. So, just like Nova Scotia, months before a natural disaster occurred, they signed an agreement. The state of North Carolina signed an agreement with this company to extract these minerals on residential areas. But they need the residents to get out of there. They need to destroy the building so they could start going in, clearing it out, and start this mining process. So, conveniently, as he says, it's too much of a coincidence to be a coincidence that months later, a natural disaster occurred right at the very spot that they want to open for mining. And here's a bit of news coverage. This is from a local station in North Carolina that's explaining this process.
Tonight, a group of Gaston County homeowners are trying to prevent a proposed lithium mine from digging any further. Back in 2019, we first told you about Piedmont Lithium's plans to mine one of the world's most abundant lithium deposits a few miles east of Cherryville. The chemical element is critical to power our cell phones and electric vehicles. But as WCNC Charlotte's Brandon Goldner shows us, neighbors fear the mine will cause irreparable damage to their environment.
Piedmont Lithium insists they'll be good neighbors as they extract lithium from rocks like this. But homeowners here believe the company will only cause harm to this land. The biggest reason why Will Baldwin loves visiting his grandparents' Gaston County home is all the things hiding in plain sight.
All these little places and home sites have interesting and so much historical value.
Piedmont Lithium also loves what's hiding in this part of the county. Except what they find valuable can't be seen to the naked eye. This area is home to one of the world's most abundant lithium deposits. And as more people buy electric cars, that chemical element will be critical for batteries. While these electric cars are seen as beneficial to the environment, Baldwin fears Piedmont Lithium's plans for an open pit mine will damage the environment around his grandparents' neighborhood. He's worried any dust from the mine will get into the nearby Beaver Dam and Little Beaver Dam creeks, which flow directly to the South Fork Catawba River.
Mining is extractive.
Yeah, think about the irony of that. More electric vehicles are great for the environment. We just got to destroy a large part of the environment just to maintain the minerals to create batteries for the electric vehicle. I mean, that kind of contradicts everything, right? That kind of contradicts the whole measure of EV mandates and making sure it's safe for the planet. We just got to destroy part of it to extract certain minerals. And in order to do so, we got to kick people off their land. We got to contaminate their water supply, which we've seen before, that minerals and mining excavation devastates nearby water reservoirs that affects people's drinking water. We got to do all this devastation to somehow create electric vehicles for billionaires for them to preach and scold at us that's beneficial for the planet. As they're going around on private jets, as they're eating, steaks and telling you to eat bugs. It's a total contradiction. It's a total contradiction. But this explains why all of a sudden we need to have this hurricane just kind of in the direction and scare people out, get them out of the area, put them into an evacuation zone where they're not receiving funds. And now we could start the mining process after they just signed the agreement for this company to go in and decimate on this small town in North Carolina. So it seems very familiar to what's happening in Nova Scotia. Again, I can't confirm nor deny that that's happening, but I can tell you that the evidence that the previous legislation before this ban, before the wildfires, suggests otherwise. I'm not saying it's happening. I'm just saying 2 + 2 is going to get you to 4. Because of stuff like this. Because it just, again, the convenience factor of this. That, all of a sudden a natural disaster occurred after we just signed off the land to a nefarious company that wants to go in and destroy. And there's a lot of residents in North Carolina. There's a lot of residents in Nova Scotia that are on these lands where the minerals are that they want to get out. They want the people off the lands so they can go in and start the mining process and make huge amounts of dollars, devastating more of the planet, as they claim that it's beneficial to the planet. Here's this guy, Ryan Matta, Says hurricane update. Did you know BlackRock just signed a $90 million contract for lithium in the exact town that was the hardest hit by the hurricane? You don't say. Could it be similar to a wildfire where they signed a contract for uranium just months prior, that the company almost seems cheerful about these wildfires, how they're not putting it, stomping on it or extinguishing the wildfires? Could it be the same thing? Well, the evidence suggests otherwise, and here's another proof of this. This one's from CNBC.
Dependent on one mineral called high purity quartz, and virtually the entire global supply of that quartz comes from one tiny town called Spruce Pine, North Carolina. Now, Spruce Pine saw 2 feet of rainfall from Hurricane Helene, and now nearly a week later, city officials tell me that there's still no water, power, or cell service. The infrastructure is completely disrupted to the point that roads and railways are so torn up that in some areas in the western part of the state, mules are being used to transport materials in and out. So the 2 companies that operate the quartz mines there, that's Sibelco and Quartz Corp, they tell us their work has been shut down since Thursday, and Quartz Corp adds that they have no visibility as to when operations can restart. So the question becomes not just whether the mines themselves have been damaged, but also whether it's possible to get the quartz out. Disruptions would impact not only the $5 billion quartz market, but the $600 billion semiconductor market that depends on it. And that quartz is also used in solar panels, fiber optic cables, and some light bulbs, which could all see some issues as well.
So no concern about the people living in North Carolina, the devastating humanity cost in natural disasters, the evacuations, flooding, storm surges, the fact these people lost everything, the fact these people are still salvaging because the federal government just gave them the FU and told them to, go pound sand, while they're giving enormous amounts of money still to Ukraine and Israel for having more warfare and killing off more humanity. But according to CNBC, they're worried about the quartz. What about those precious rocks? What about them? Because we need them for semiconductors. We need them for solar panels. Oh my God. A flooding is occurring at these mines. They might have to shut down for a couple days. Oh my God, think of the rocks. Forget the people. Forget the innocent lives that are costed by this devastation. Be concerned about the rocks. They have feelings too, All minerals matter.
And Kelly, I just spoke a few minutes ago with the head of TechSet. They track the quartz supply chain. Their best guess right now is 4 to 6 weeks until things are back up and running in Spruce Pine. And that's if the roads are able to be cleared. So that alone could lead to at least minor slowdowns for the chip makers. And every day that timeline gets extended, Kelly, the impact just multiplies.
So there you go. CNBC made the point exactly that this is all about business. That these natural disasters like a hurricane or a wildfire or anything else seems to be some sort of insider business dealing that people are not allowed to know about. And if they knew about this, they'd be even more devastated than they currently are right now. Just like how Maui and California, when they had their wildfires, all of a sudden now you get Gavin Newsom, the governor, giggling up the fact that, those burnt properties, we could sell off the land to other developers and then create these monstrosity apartment buildings that look like jail cells. Yay! After you burnt down how many hundreds of homes? The livelihoods of families that are now devastatingly impacted. And you're giddy about, we could sell off the land to developers. Yay us! What did Table Salt say? That it's too convenient to be convenient? Too much of a coincidence to be a coincidence. Like I said, I can't confirm or deny that that's why these wildfires are occurring, that there's business ventures to be profited off this. But the evidence kind of suggests that. The evidence is going into that direction. Whether you want to believe it or not, clearly it's in the eye of the beholder. But here's what's just absolutely more devastating, and really is just an FU from the Canadian government. As Pleb Reporter points out, the two conservative, quotations, premiers who refused to help Pierre Poilievre during the election were recently spotted at a private liberal barbecue party. Barbecue? Aren't they worried that barbecue, when they light and ignite, may spark a grain of grass that could start a fire? Aren't they concerned about that? You told people not to hike in forests because feet apparently start fires. What about a barbecue? Should we start banning parties? Should we start restricting people from that too? Honest to God. These traitors helped the Liberals win the election, and this pic exposes what everyone already knew. Doug Ford and Tim Houston are scum. So there's your progressive conservatives, which it's an oxymoron, really. Progressive conservative. That's an oxymoron. And now here you see them, because Doug Ford and Tim Houston, even though they're conservative by name, they're cozying up to the establishment to keep their comfy position. They want Doug Ford to be the leader of the National Conservative Party. That's why they're trying to get Pierre Poilievre off his seat the second time around in his by-election. That's why there's so much emphasis on trying to eliminate him from the cabinet and from Parliament, to put a scumbag like Doug Ford in position, because Doug Ford easily rolls over to the establishment, easily sells you out. Pierre Poilievre, even though there's some faults within his campaign and from his persona, but it's a little harder to control him than it is Doug Ford or Tim Houston. They easily cave to the establishment. They easily cave to the worst. Why? Because they want their comfy position. They want to remain premier. They like having taxpayer dollars flourish their every wants and wishes. They don't want to give it up. They don't want to lose their lobbyists and their donors and have this untrenched power that people aren't questioning. They don't want to give that up. So, of course, they're going to side with the worst and sell you guys out in a heartbeat. That whole picture is scum. That whole picture is scum. And even look, there's Toronto Mayor Olivia Chow. Remember that? Remember Olivia Chow was supposed to be this, level-headed person that was going to bring rents down. It was going to make things affordable in Toronto. We were going to do it for the people. And here she is, cozying up with the worst of the worst. Because, like Doug Ford, like Tim Houston, like anyone else in this photo, they are part of the club. They are part of the club. You ain't in it. I ain't in it. And they stick together because they don't want to lose their comfy position of authoritarian power. They don't want to lose that up. They don't want to divvy up and actually serve the people that elected them into office. And it doesn't even matter who's in office, because they're going to serve to the Uniparty, the Liberal Conservative Uniparty, and the NDP, and the Green Party. So really, your vote is a waste of time, because it serves one master. It serves whoever's control and whoever deeps more donor money into the parliament system. And that just sums it up perfectly on how scummy all these people are. Look at, there's even Jean Chrétien. That's good you restrict, how do you do it? It's good you restrict people from walking. I can't do his lip thing. I can say Quebec. Canada without Quebec is Quebec without Canada. They say a picture says a lot of words, 1,000 words. and words I can't even say on YouTube. So we'll just leave it at that.